How's it going, guys? Today I wanted to focus on something more special and talk about my top 10 favorite anime films of all time. Growing up, this was an interesting medium for me. I felt like it was the more artistic, the more symbolically rich genre among animated films that I would watch in comparison, like many of the American films. So it was something that I was drawn to immediately, and a lot of people that I went to school with also were drawn to the genre. So I was exposed to the genre pretty early, and over the years I've watched a lot of the TV shows as well as movies, and I just wanted to make a top 10 to talk about some movies that you might not have seen that ought to be checked out, because some really good titles here. Before we dive in, I did want to diversify this list of movies just to give people options of based on style of what they would like. So for my honorable mentions, the first movie that I want to mention is The Belladonna of Sadness. This is, quite frankly, one of the darkest, one of the most interesting and bizarre anime films that I've ever watched. It's also one of the earlier anime films. It's a 70s film, so if you want more trippy, more dark, more lucid and experimental anime, I would 100% recommend The Belladonna of Sadness. I think this is one of the most surreal and interesting animes out there. If you're a fan of something like Berserk, maybe check this out. It has very similar themes to that. Next up, we're gonna get into some classics, and I'm gonna get a lot of heat for not putting these movies in the top 10, but there's that saying where it's just like, it's so difficult to put movies in the top 10. So we're gonna talk about some classic movies that some people probably have in their top 5. And let's talk about Ghost in a Shell. I think this is a phenomenal movie. I think this movie captures the atmosphere phenomenally. I think the music, I go back and I listen to the score of this movie all the time. I think it's fantastic. The characters, the world, they're all interesting. And I think what draws me into this movie is that tone, that atmosphere, and the futuristic world that it's built. There's something kind of awe-inspiring about that film. I think what really lowers it a little bit on the list is sometimes, just the dryness of the characters. I feel like characters are lacking on emotion. And I think that's what I really latch onto in movies is that emotion, is really, feeling for the characters and understanding them. And that's where I kind of miss that in Ghost in the Shell. But another film that's on here that's an honorable mention, it's gonna be Princess Mononoke. I know. The animation is really, really great. And I love the music. And I like the characters. I just, for some reason, I didn't grow up with this one. It took me a while to get to it. And when I finally did watch it, I liked it. I really liked it. It's in my honorable mentions list, so I do really like it. I feel like all the other animes on this list I just like slightly more, and that's why we're getting to the nitty-gritty. We're getting to which ones do I leave out, which ones do I put up on that mantle. So that's where Princess Mononoke is just, didn't make that top 10. Next up is Paprika. This is another experimental and wildly hallucinatory story. If you're into mind-bending stories, if you're into just jumping into this journey, head first without knowing what's going on, this is definitely an interesting movie to watch. It's visually stunning. Satoshi Kon always has very wild and interesting stories to tell, and a lot of this movie is just it's very ambitious, and I just appreciate the story that's told here. And that's why I had to put it in here, because I did enjoy watching this quite a bit. So the next two films I really wanted to put in the top 10. In fact, these movies would be in my top 10. But I also had to put a caveat in the fact that not everybody watches TV shows. And both of these movies heavily rely on the TV series to carry that nostalgia, to carry that lore of the characters. So I had to leave them out, because it wouldn't be fair to other movies that only rely on that one movie to establish its characters and the actual story. So for movies like End of Evangelion, which is a fantastic movie, I couldn't put it into the top 10, so I had to leave it out in honorable mentions list, simply because it's essentially the last 2 episodes of the series, and if you haven't watched the series, it's gonna be really confusing. I mean, the movie itself is very ambitious in its vision, so it's gonna be a little difficult to follow anyway. Just on a first viewing, you're like, what happened? So if you don't watch the show, you're gonna be kind of left out. So for that reason, that's why I had to leave it out, because it relies so heavily on the show. I thought it would just wouldn't be fair. So if you haven't seen the series, do yourself a favor, watch it. It's one of the best anime TV series out there, and then follow up with the movie. And then the other film that I left out is the Cowboy Bebop movie. Much to the same effect. I feel like you still enjoy Cowboy Bebop movie if you haven't watched the show, but you know, it's one of those hangout animes that you want to know these characters. You want to hang out with them and explore their past. They're complicated characters, and you don't get that just by watching the movie. It's a nice supplemental film after watching the series, but I don't think you know, it does it justice just watching the movie on its own. So for that, you know, great movie, but had to put it outside the top 10. And the last film in the honorable mentions is Redline. Now this is a smaller film. I don't think a whole lot of people talk about it, but if you like racing, if you like really edgy characters, and if you like Cowboy Bebop, that's a perfect example, you probably will like this one, because it's such an adrenaline-packed film with really nice characters, and the music is just like upbeat, and the movie just never stops. It presses on the gas pedal and it just goes, and you're just in it for the ride. And then by the time it's over, you're like, oh man, this movie's over. Just, you know, I wanted to continue. Like, it would have been such a great TV series. I really appreciate this film. It was one of the more recent animes that I had watched, and more people need to check out. So if you haven't seen Redline, do check it out, but it just didn't make my top 10. The top 10, like I said, it's back and forth. I didn't know which movies to kick out, which movies to leave in, and so it was a constant back and forth with a lot of these movies in the honorable mentions list and the top 10. So with that being said, let's talk about the top 10 anime films. At number 10 is probably one of the earliest anime films that I had watched, and that's Howl's Moving Castle. And to think that this movie is number 10 is just crazy to me, because this movie was pretty high up for the longest amount of time. I had this movie outside the top 10 at some point, and I was like, this is crazy. How am I not including this movie? Because the imagination, the characters, just, it's such a beautiful movie, and I just love the journey, and I just had to put that in there. It's like, I have a lot of memories with this movie, and I think it's just a very enchanting movie to get lost in. Number 9 is Millennium Actress. We got another Satoshi Kon film, and this is such a soulful film, and I think it does such a fantastic job exploring memories and your past. It's very reflective, and I think because of such, it creates very rich characters and creates themes that are just very interesting to follow throughout the movie. It's a very mysterious movie, and because of that, it keeps you on your toes, and you're wondering, well, who is this guy, and you know, is she gonna find him? If you've never seen a Satoshi Kon film, I would recommend it. I mean, I love all of his movies, and I think his style is just incredible, and Millennium Actress is no exception to his craft. At number 8 is Your Name. This is such an emotional movie, and like I said earlier, it's the characters, for me personally, that always sell the anime. If you can capture that emotion, if you can just suck me in and keep me invested in the story, in those characters, and really feel their journey, I'm gonna really love that anime, and Your Name is no exception. I think it's one of the best at telling its story and combining different genres, because it feels like Interstellar, but it also feels like Before Sunrise. So it captures the best of both, and I think that's what really works with this movie really well. Sometimes it's the multi-genre anime films that really do it well. It's got a great score, beautiful animation, and a refreshing story, and I think that's what I really need, because a lot of anime films nowadays, they feel repetitive. They feel like there's a lot of copying and pasting. They don't feel very inspired sometimes. So a movie like this, it is one of the newer animes. I mean, it's 2016. It's a little old now, but I still think it's one of the newer ones I have on this list. And number 7 is yet another character-driven story, and that is A Silent Voice. These characters are very easy to get behind. You understand these characters' situation. It's a very touching story. I mean, it's also very dark. It's a movie that's covering suicide and bullying and your own self-image. So it's covering interesting themes. These characters, like I said, they're very easy to follow and understand their situation. So I was immediately drawn to the story, to the characters. The animation is good, the score is good, and I also really like the fact that this film took its time to tell its story. It's not rushing, and I feel like that lets you settle in and get to know these characters, and it really works for a movie like this. At number 6, big surprise, is another Satoshi Kon film, and that's Tokyo Godfathers. Not the most popular film, but I really, again, enjoyed spending time with the characters in these movies. Each character is so unique. They have completely different personalities, and the animation paired with the dark humor and this interesting like situation that these characters in is what made it so fascinating to follow. You know, with some movies, it does take time to get into the story. With this, I was hooked immediately. I just really fell in love with the story, these oddball characters, and each person is hiding a bit of truth in themselves, and we slowly find that out about them, and as they slowly get comfortable with each other and they reveal their vulnerabilities. So really interesting film from a character study, but also a beautiful looking film, beautiful sounding film, and a film the time just flew by watching. At number 5 is The Boy and the Heron, which is quite surprising for me that it's in my top 10, because if I was judging this based on my first viewing, it wouldn't be on here. But every time I watch it, I like it more and more, and now I just think it's definitely one of the top 10 best anime films, and I feel like more people need to watch it, give it more viewings. It's a celebration, obviously, of Miyazaki's work. I feel like every piece of work that he's done is in this movie, and aside from that, I think it's a symbolically rich film. The character of Mahito sometimes isn't the most relatable character, but he's also suppressing a lot of emotions because of everything that he's lived through in his life. So I kind of put myself into his shoes and kind of got into his psychological state to kind of understand his his behavior in the movie. And the more you got to know him and why he's behaving the way he is, the more you understood him, and then you fell into this journey with him. I enjoy it every time I watch it, and every time I finish watching it, I'm just in awe. I'm thinking, you know what, that was actually fantastic. Like, if you don't mind the slow burn, there's a lot to appreciate in this film. So I had to put that in my top 5 because it's a movie that I want to keep revisiting and picking more pieces of the puzzle up, and understanding this movie even more and appreciating it even more. So yeah, so that's why it's at number 5. Number 4 is The Grave of Fireflies, another really sad anime. In fact, probably the saddest animes out there. That ending, I mean, talk about endings. It's one of those movies that really gets you in the feels. It's a beautifully told story, and I like that this movie shies away from magic systems. We get caught up a lot of times watching anime with magic systems because they're kind of this escape from reality. This movie chooses not to present it. It chooses to give us actual reality, war, and families that are torn apart, and it's a hard watch. It's definitely a hard watch, but it's also a rewarding one, and one that, you know, maybe isn't the most revisitable film because of that nature, but one I really appreciate for its boldness, for that vision. It's definitely one of the most memorable anime films of all time, and if you have the stomach for it, do watch it. It is a fantastic movie. Number 3 is my favorite Satoshi Kon film, and that is Perfect Blue. I think this is one of his more successful ones of all the ones that he has done. What a psychological trip this was. Another movie that just gets better with every viewing because you pick up more layers to the puzzle here. And I think this is one hell of a thriller. It's dark. I was not expecting the turns that this film took on first viewing, and they still surprise me every time I watch it because I sit there and I forget just how great this movie is. And it's one of those films that you should know as little as possible going into and just be in it for the ride. And you're gonna be turning around and be like, what is that? What is that? And it's like, did that just happen? What does that mean? And that's okay. It's okay to be asking questions. It's okay to not understand everything that this movie is throwing at you. But it's one of those movies that requires you to think. It requires you to really pay attention. And the more you do so, or the more you rewatch, the more you pick up and admire that ambitious and bold ending. And number 2 is The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, and I don't see this movie on many lists. Like, it's acknowledged, but not on many lists. And this is probably one of the most spiritual and thematically rich anime films out there. It's very abstract in some sense, like it does establish the story enough for you to understand, but depending on your religious views, depending on your values, you're gonna interpret this movie differently. And I really appreciate that this film can take many routes and could have many meanings and layers to the story. It's sometimes jarring to step into a movie like this because its animation is very different. I mean, it's almost like a painting. It's every single frame is like a watercolor. You look at this movie and you're like, does not look like a 2013 movie. But I really admired its style. It's very different. It's very reflective. It's very meditative. And by the time it was over, it was I fell in love with it. I thought it was a fascinating story that dives into different themes about life and death and acceptance and appreciating what you have in your life and being patient. It's an enchanting film. I really like the score. Like I said, the animation is very unique. It's definitely a one-of-a-kind anime film that ought to be checked out. And at number 1 is kind of an obvious pick. At this point, you've probably figured, since it wasn't in the honorable mentions list and I haven't talked about it yet, it has to be Spirited Away. And that would be true because it's my favorite anime film of all time. Probably actually my first anime film that I had watched. It wasn't my first exposure to anime because I had watched TV series before that, but it's one that really opened my eyes and made me realize anime as a form of art. I really fell in love with the characters. I thought the story was incredibly transportive. It was magical. I think this movie does everything really it needs to drive home its story, to really dive deep into the morality tale of its story. And I thought it was rich with its symbolism. I really enjoyed the characters, the music, the magic system that's created here, the world that we step into. It's a really powerful film about identity and inner strength, and it's also a coming of age story, and we're traversing this world that she steps into and seeing her become an adult, make the right decisions, not fall to gluttony. I think it was a blast to watch from start to finish. There is some nostalgia here that is maybe pushing this movie a little bit higher on the list, but really this is the movie that's been the blueprint for many anime films for years, and I think for good reason. I mean, Miyazaki has always kind of borrowed from Disney. You could tell he puts a lot of Disney ideas into his movies, but he doesn't copy and paste these ideas. He is very imaginative with those ideas, and he creates these wonderfully immersive worlds, and these characters are very well written and they fit this world, and you're just instantly attached to them and that journey in that world, and just seeing where it takes you. When I think of Miyazaki, I think of stepping into a world and really escaping into it, and that's what this movie was. It was a great escape from reality, and I feel like a lot of people really did escape into this movie and appreciate it. So it's my favorite anime of all time, one that I do revisit more than all the other anime films on this list. That's why it's also at my number 1, and yeah. So that is my top 10 anime films of all time. Do comment your own picks for the top 10 best anime films of all time. I'll be curious to check out those titles in the comment section. Also, while you're down there, make sure to hit that thumbs up. Really appreciate the support. And don't forget to hit that subscription bar down below as well. And as always, guys, I will see you in a later video.